So, welcome friends, welcome coaches to your ICF class series. Yes, Yasmin, it has been too long, hasn't it? I've missed you. All right, so tonight I'm very excited to bring you the first of a series of ICF class competencies that we're going to be going through in order to assist you with your applications for the International Coach Federation. All right, so phew, I've kicked Hayden out. It's now just me back in the class. And welcome to the ICF class series. So I wanted to introduce this by talking to you just a tiny bit about why we're doing this series, what it's all about. Okay, so what is the International Coach Federation? Well, the International Coach Federation is the peak worldwide body for the practice and profession of coaching. It was founded in 1995, and the ICF's core purpose is to lead global advancement of the coaching profession. As the leading global coaching organisation, the ICF is working toward this goal by setting high standards, providing independent certification and building a worldwide network of credentialed coaches. So that's what the International Coach Federation is all about. Now, I jumped on their website today and got some statistics. There are actually currently, how many? Okay, currently there are 20,222 members of the International Coach Federation, of whom 9,371 coaches hold credentials. What does that mean? Well, there's, I guess, a couple of different ways you can approach your ICF membership. You can become a member of the ICF and have access to their membership website, resources, all kinds of information, the latest studies and practices, webinars and so on, by simply paying a registration fee and joining up as a non-credentialed member. However, the real advantage for belonging to the ICF comes when you get your credentials. What does that mean? It means that you've been assessed by the ICF as having a certain level of competency in your coaching journey, and there are 3 levels of credentials that are available. I'm currently pursuing my first level, which is the Associate Certified Coach, of which there are 5,550 in the world and only 100 in Australia. So it's a pretty high-level qualification. The the professional certified coaches are even more rare, and then in the world there's only 637 master certified coaches. And that's all to do with how many coaching hours you've done, all kinds of different professional development and so on. So it's a tiered system that members work through in their attempt to continue their coaching journey and get even more recognition for their qualifications. The requirements of the membership are quite a lot. We actually don't have enough time to go through all the requirements tonight, but they're all available on their website. So if you just have a look at their website, you can see what the different requirements of membership are. Now, for all of you guys, we're providing ICF classes, we're providing mentoring, and we're providing a level of coach training that is suitable for you to count towards your application for your ICF credentialing. So what that means is the stuff that we do with you at the Life Coaching College is of enough quality and is of the right quality and quantity to count towards a substantial part of your application. And the purpose of this class series is really to start getting a conversation going around the ICF competencies, familiarise you with them, and really for you guys to start seeing them not just as a set of rules to be followed, but they're actually a framework for problem solving and quality in your coaching practice. So that's a little overview of why we're doing these classes. Now, tonight, guys, you're definitely going to need a pen and paper. This is a different kind of a class. It's not so much of a question and answer, not quite so light-hearted as usual because there's a lot of content in this, okay? So I just really want to encourage you to take plenty of notes tonight. The more you understand this before you go for your application, the easier it will be for you to be able to tick everything off. Okay, so ICF core competencies were developed to support greater understanding about the skills and approaches that are used within today's coaching profession as defined by the ICF. They help set the benchmark for coach training and coach practice around the world. And these competencies are used as the foundation for the ICF credentialing process examinations. The core competencies are grouped into 4 clusters according to those that fit together logically based on common ways of looking at the competencies in each group. The groupings and individual competencies aren't weighted, they're all equally important. Okay, so there are 11 ICF core competencies and they're grouped in 4 chunks. And so I'm just going to quickly introduce those to you just so you have an idea of what it's all about. The first chunk or the first section of your ICF core competencies is about setting the foundation for your coaching. So in terms of part A, number 1 is meeting ethical guidelines and professional standards, and number 2 is establishing the coaching agreement. Now part B is where we're actually starting our journey. Why? Because Doc has some other classes he's going to run for you about some of the other stuff, and I'm filling in the gaps where we needed to do some discussion. So we're going to be starting with number B3 tonight. That's where we'll be starting. So we're starting with co-creating the relationship, and we'll be doing B3, which is establishing trust and intimacy with the client. And B4, which we'll be talking about next week, is your coaching presence. Let's have a look at some of the other core competencies or the remaining core competencies. Okay, the third chunk or part C is communicating effectively in your coaching sessions. So that is broken up into 3 different areas of active listening, powerful questioning, and direct communication. And then the 4th and final part, D, being facilitating learning and results. So part 8 is creating awareness, part 9, designing actions, part 10, planning and goal setting, and part 11 is managing progress and accountability. So they're the 11 ICF core competencies. Each one has a lot of different parts to it underneath. And so we're going to be starting tonight by having a look at establishing trust and intimacy with the client. Okay, so part B, establishing trust and intimacy with the client. Okay, guys, forgive me, I'm stopping for a second. Are you seeing my screen? Yeah, you can see, yep, okay, great. So someone was just asking, do you have slides? Yeah, cool, okay. Yes, you can see my slides. Okay, great. So in terms of establishing trust and intimacy with the client, it's about having the ability to create a safe and supportive environment that produces ongoing mutual respect and trust. Okay, so the 6 parts of this one competency, I'll just show them to you and then we're going to start discussing what they actually mean. Okay, so part 1, they show genuine concern for the client's welfare and future. Number 2, continuously demonstrates personal integrity, honesty and sincerity. Number 3, establishes clear agreements and keeps promises. And number 4, demonstrates respect for the client's perceptions, learning style and personal being. Number 5 of these competencies is that the coach provides ongoing support for and champions new behaviours and actions, including those involving risk-taking and the fear of failure. And finally, number 6 is asks permission to coach client in sensitive new areas. Okay, so that's a really, really broad overview of what we'll be talking about tonight. But what I wanted to do was open up the floor for a bit of discussion, because you guys know how to do so much of this stuff already. These are things that are not new. We've spoken about them in terms of coaching before. And what I want to do is try and find out what you already know about this. So guys, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'd love to hear some of your answers. What would be some of the ways that we could provide a safe, supportive environment that produces ongoing mutual respect and trust? How do we do that with a client in the session? What are the specific things that we do that help the client feel safe and supported, respected, and that they can trust you? Yeah, Enrico, listening, good. Rapport building, Tendai, massive, massive. Yeah, building and maintaining rapport, Kerry, you're right. Asking for permission, you're right, Etienne. Confidential and non-judgmental, Kirsty, awesome. Guaranteed confidentiality, yep, Bob, you're right. Acknowledgement, Voight, huge. Yasmin saying complete confidentiality, come from a judgment-free zone, ask respectfully, yeah. And Lisa is saying eye contact. Awesome, guys. These are all important things. Is there anything else? Yep, Greg, letting the client know it's a judgment-free zone. Deb, hi Deb, by having a conversation with them to tell them we're in a cone of silence and we have their best interests at heart, and we'll challenge them to get out of their comfort zone, and also showing empathy. Yeah, great, Deb, thank you. All important stuff. Any other comments? How would you go about creating a safe and supportive environment that's full of respect and trust? Any other comments, ideas? Daniela is saying integrity and professionalism. Live what you're saying. Yep, fantastic. Great. Yeah, matching and mirroring, Kerry. Yeah, Mona, sometimes sharing something personal can be a great way to break down barriers. You're right. Just make sure it's appropriate. Pam, being open and honest. Beata, rapport and a cuppa. Yeah, that's a lovely welcoming way to do that. Deb, seeing things with a light-hearted approach and make it okay to have a laugh at the situation too. Don't get bogged down. Love it, Deb. It's really important. In fact, I nearly always will build some laughter in, whether it's you know, genuinely there or whether I'm just reaching for that little bit of humour in the situation. I think it's really important that you use that. And sometimes just, you know, have a bit of a laugh about the silliness of it all. Etienne, no advice, just great questions. Love it. Yasmin, don't impose your map over theirs. Beautiful. Guys, you know so much about this. Wonderful. So, yeah, I agree. Oh, Deb, here we go. I had a couple with me that someone had cheated the other day, and I started with, wow, we have a mess on our hands here. It made them feel comfortable. Yeah, good. I think sometimes it's about naming the elephant in the room and just going, yep, okay, so this is not how we want it to be. Huh, oh, well, that's life. Okay, now how are we going to work towards getting where we want to go? You're right. All right, so I agree. I think it's all those things that you've mentioned and even more. So it's about rapport. It's about respect, listening. It's also about telling the truth and really not being afraid to tell a hard truth when you need to. Giving generously of your attention, your time, your resources, and absolutely coaching from the heart. It's also about seeing the magnificence in your client every time, always, and holding yourself and your client to high standards. So coaching is not just a nice little happy conversation. It's a place where people come to feel safe and to feel held, but also to be pushed and to get different results. It's about keeping your commitments, and it's about using a professional and polite language and demeanour. And sometimes that means interrupting, and sometimes it means not interrupting. And sometimes it means being sensitive and tactful, and sometimes it means being the opposite. And you've got to have the sensory acuity to know intuitively when those times are. When do you challenge? When do you hold back? You also need to know what to do in a highly emotional situation. So if a client is crying or upset, or you've really busted through some boundaries and they're feeling pretty overwhelmed, then you need to know what to do in those situations as well. And more than anything for me, this one is all about having intent and integrity with your coaching. So let's look specifically now at those 6 different competencies within this subset, and we'll talk about how to make sure that we're really hitting the nail on the head with these. Our purpose here, guys, yes, is to meet the requirements of our ICF coaching, and certainly to when you get to the point where you want to do your assessments for your ICF credentials, that you will have all these competencies. But more than that, even more than that, these classes, and this class is about helping you to be the best, most professional, most well-rounded, world-class coach that you can be. And these are the competencies that are defined by the International Coach Federation, the standard, the benchmark for coaching, as the ones that really need to happen in a coaching session. So grab your pen and listen up. All right. So the first thing that is required of us in terms of creating the right environment for coaching is showing genuine concern for the client's welfare and their future. All right, so how do we go about doing this, coaches? Well, for me, and I'm guessing for many of you as well, it all really means it starts with coaching from the heart. Coaching from the heart, what do I mean? I mean using some of that wonderful knowledge that you have and really internalizing it and making it an intuitive thing where when you're coaching, you're not always in your head. You're not always thinking, what's the next question? You're just doing exactly what Beata has just written. Be present. Be present. Be there with that person and coach from the heart space. Coaching from the head leads to surface coaching. Coaching from the heart really helps you connect with that other person and really just be present with them and get into their map a little bit. Now, if you're genuinely concerned about your client, as this competency requires, then it means that you're always focused on finding the solutions that the client wants to find. It means that you're not doing a coaching session and kind of half planning and thinking about what you're going to have for dinner or thinking about last night's movie that you watched. Yeah, you're right, Etienne, coaching with our whole being. It means having real concern that the client is going to get what they need to get from the session. Now, as you know, I say to you that we can never know what the client is getting out of the session, but there are certainly times when you can see whether you're on track or not. And you need to have the right level of genuine concern and professionalism that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get the client to the solution that they want to get to. It also means taking time, getting to know your client so that you can use the appropriate methodology for them. There is no one-size-fits-all in coaching, and it really means taking the time early on in your sessions and early on in each session, because remember, things can change from week to week, to re-establish rapport with your client, to get to know what is their rep system, what are the hot buttons for them, what are the things you know you need to work on with them. Getting to know them and building a real framework of understanding a little bit of their map. And when I say understanding, what I mean is appreciating. You can never really understand a client's map, but you can see little pieces of it. If you're showing real concern for the client's welfare and future, then you must also use a holistic approach. And so in terms of your coaching, this means If a client, for example, has a goal of losing a certain amount of weight before a big event, and they have an idea of how much weight they need to lose, and it seems like they're going into an unhealthy, underweight category, or if they're trying to lose an excessive amount of weight that really is going to take away from their health, then you need to temper your goal approach with a more holistic approach as well. Whatever you're working on with the client must be ecological. It must be good for the whole client in all parts of their life. It must be good for the other people around them and the situations around them, and it must be good for the world at large. And using that kind of holistic approach really means that the client isn't just focusing on one small little part, but understanding how that fits into the whole of who they are as a human being. And this is really important because sometimes clients can be so focused on one goal that they don't understand they need to consider the other sides of the wheel of life as well, the other sides of how this is going to work. If you're concerned for the client's welfare and future, then you're also exploring the future. You're exploring what will this change mean for them once it's made, and how will that look in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Is it something that's going to be sustainable? You must explore that with the client. What we mustn't do is leave the client in a state where in 6 months' time they're going to be in a complete mess again, because we've helped them to set onto a path which is not useful for their whole future. And it's really about always checking in with the client, testing and measuring, having that sensory acuity to sense whether the path that you're going down with that client, is it working for them? Is it not? And if not, having the behavioural flexibility to move to a different coaching style. If you're concerned for the client's welfare and their future, then you must also hold that client to a standard. If they're coming to you for a certain result and they want a different result in a certain part of their life, then holding them to that, even when it gets tough, even when they say, oh no, I've changed my mind, I don't want to do that anymore, having the wherewithal and the resilience to really have those difficult conversations with the client and ask them, hey, man, you know, you came to me and you were so set that this is what you wanted to achieve. What's changed? Are you scared? What's holding you back? And where you need to, telling them the truth. If they're not stepping up, telling them the truth about that. If they're sabotaging themselves, telling them the truth about that. Because you're showing concern for the client's welfare and future, where you're not allowing them to get away with behaviour that has led them to have the results they currently have. You're telling them the truth about what's going to need to change if they want to hit that new goal for the future. Can I check in with you guys, please? Is this all cool? It's a different style of webinar tonight. It's a lot more academic. There's a lot more sort of chunky material, and I want to check that we're all cool. Ask questions as you go, guys, if you wish. Great, thank you. Yeah, Beata, Beata's asked a question about, she has lots of clients where they wish to achieve an unhealthy weight. How do you approach them and tell them it's not healthy? It's different for everyone, Beata, but in your profession I would certainly be partnering with some medical professionals, maybe having some information about the recommended healthy weight ranges available to them so that they can see it, and partnering with doctors or other specialists as you need to, because yeah, I think that one can be quite concerning, and you need to tread carefully with that. Thank you. Okay, cool. All good, great. Thanks, guys. Awesome, great comments, so I'll keep moving. All right. So point 2 in this particular competency of co-creating the relationship is continuously demonstrates personal integrity, honesty, and sincerity. And this one, guys, this is my favorite thing to talk about personally, because I believe, it is my belief, that coaching is about nothing but integrity. My personal belief is that coaching is all about integrity. It's about who the coach is choosing to be. It's about the standard they're choosing to hold the client to. It's about who the client is choosing then in turn to be. And it's about the integrity of the relationship that you establish with that client. So this is a huge one for me, and this is really to the core of my beliefs about what coaching is all about. Coaching for me is one of the purest forms of relationship you can have with someone, because there's no bullshit, and ultimately there should be no manipulation, no lies, nothing like that. It should be all about truth, because only from a place of truth can transformation occur that will be sustainable in the long term. So what does this mean? Well, integrity means being a consistent kind of coach with your client. There is a certain level of behaviour and professionalism that you will find is suitable for who you're going to be as a coach. And that level must be what you always demand of yourself, and there must be consistency in that. What do I mean by that? The kind of language you use, the care that you take in your coaching sessions, the time and trouble you take with re-establishing rapport, the consistency of using the right kind of target language for your client, your demeanour, your ability to be present with them. All of that stuff must be consistent. Only then are you really displaying integrity in your coaching. And what do I mean? I mean showing up and playing 100% every single time. One of the fabulous things that I love most about coaching, and I think you'll find this too, is that once you start coaching, even if you've had the day from hell, all of that just disappears, because you are purely focused on that client, and there's a purity and sincerity in that relationship which is just beautiful. And it's not a challenge to be there. It's actually a great pleasure to be there. I find it nearly like meditating. It just takes up 100% of my focus, and in that moment I can be whoever the client needs me to be. And so if you're showing up every time and playing 100% every time, not only will that consistency just be there, not only will coaching just naturally happen, but you'll enjoy your coaching so much more. So it's about giving them the attention and intention that you wish for them to get the best outcome. Now, what do I mean by intention? I think attention we understand. Attention is, great eye contact, showing them with your body and your active listening that you're really paying attention to them, and that, linguistically as well, you're paying attention. You're reflecting their language back at them, doing all of that wonderful matching and mirroring. But intention, sometimes, guys, you're going to work with clients who you don't agree with, who you don't like, who perhaps their goals you feel are not the right goal. And your intention in coaching must be to drop those judgments and become a blank canvas to help them achieve whatever is right for their life. And your intention must always be positive, even when the client is truly trying to achieve something that you feel would not be right for you. What do I mean by this? Let me think. You might be doing some business coaching, and a client might be going very aggressively after a certain sale, and perhaps they're doing so in a style that really is not your style and kind of irks you. But your intention must ultimately be for the client to achieve what it is they want to achieve, as long as it meets those conditions, those well-formedness conditions. So we're going to look at those again shortly, but make sure that your intention for the client in that coaching session, and also before and after the coaching session, is non-judgmental, seeing the magnificence, and really just all positive. One of the worst things you can do as a coach is be a fabulous coach in the session and then come out afterwards and say, what a load of crap, blah, blah, that person is blah, 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 and judge, judge, judge. Because on a quantum level and on an energy level, you're undoing all of the wonderful work that you have just achieved with that client. And believe me, on some level, they know it. Okay, personal integrity and honesty and sincerity is also about professionalism. It's about your language, your being on, well, it's the next few points actually, being on time, keeping your word, professionalism like in terms of the documents that you send them, the agreement that you establish with them, which we'll be looking at in a moment. It's about conducting your business in a way that you would be proud for other people to see, and having a level of professionalism that really allows the client to have a lot of confidence in what's going on. So keeping your word, you know, making sure that if you say you're going to email something, that you email it. Saying that you're going to show up at 9:05, you show up at 9:05 or even 9 o'clock. Keeping your word to your client. If you say that there's some book that you're going to bring for them next week, make sure you bring the book. Just do what you said you were going to do. That integrity must be there. You must also display integrity and honesty and sincerity in the timing of your sessions. So making sure that you're offering times that are convenient not only for yourself but also for your clients. The price that you set, we've spoken about that quite a lot tonight already in the previous webinar. The price that you set, you know, you really must feel that it represents great value for money. And in the agreements that you set with your clients, there should be no clauses that allow you to screw them over, but a fair business contract that you agree to with the client. Offering exceptional value for money. I don't believe there's any other way to coach. I think you must offer exceptional value for money. Now, how do you do that? By being an exceptional coach and charging a fair price for your services, and also by offering fabulous little extras, courtesy emails, gifts, you know, great additions in your packages, doing whatever you can to really give the client every resource they need so that change is just automatic for them. And having personal integrity and honesty in your coaching is also about asking yourself, hey, can I honestly coach this? Have I done the tough work myself on whatever issues that I'm facing right now, so that you can be as baggage-free as possible in your coaching sessions? And the question that I think you can ask yourself to just make sure that this happens all the time, and I just ask this question to myself all the time, what can I do to serve my client even more right now in this moment? What can I do to serve my client even more right now in this moment? If you continue to ask yourself that question on a continual basis throughout your coaching, then all of that other stuff will just fall into place. It's a great focus to have. How can I show up even more? How can I be even more outstanding right now for this client in this moment? Okay. And guys, can I please just check in? Any questions or comments at this time? We're moving through the material quite well, and I do want to give you an opportunity to ask questions as they come up. I know that this is really heavy content, and that's just how these classes are going to be, but what we're doing is giving you everything you need to understand these competencies. Any questions or comments at this time, or am I all good to continue? Great. Thank you very much, guys. Yep. Okay. Thanks, guys. Fabulous. All right. So competency number 3 under this subset is to establish clear agreements and keep promises. All right. Now, this one it is partly about the business side of your coaching and partly about the personal integrity side. So let's look at the business side first. Having an absolutely crystal clear coaching agreement and following it. So something that a lot of coaches fail to do early on especially is to have a really watertight coaching agreement. Now, what this does is lead to ambiguity and mismatches of expectations from the client and the coach about how the coaching sessions are going to work. So I recommend right from the start, even with your pro bono clients, have a great coaching agreement and follow it all the time. Take the time to explain the coaching agreement to the client and make sure that you are holding up your end of the bargain as well. Also, please be upfront about your rates, your packages, what's included and what's not. And think carefully about the kinds of things that you can include in your packages to make them really, really exceptional value for your client. Whatever it is that you're including or not including, make sure that it's all set out as part of the coaching agreement before coaching begins, so that there is just no question and your integrity is absolutely intact on that business side of things. It's also about making sure that the client understands that they are responsible for the changes that they need to see. Please don't position yourself as a superhero who has all the answers and who can fix everything in the client's life, because we know, don't we, that that's just not the truth of the matter. In order for coaching to work, the client must do the work, and that's all there is to it. So you need to be really honest with them about that right from the start. Even if you've got someone who you think or who you know is expecting you to have the answers, and they're offering fabulous upfront payment for a big package, if you have a gut feel or if you have an inkling or a thought that there's something about this client that they're not committing and they're just expecting you to do the work for them, you've got to be honest with them about that right from the start. It's really important to set appropriate boundaries with your clients as well. So clear agreements is also about making sure that the client understands that, during this time in session, you're my client and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get you to the result that you want, which means that sometimes I'm going to speak to you in a way that you may not even like. I might ask questions that are tough. And outside of coaching, please feel free to send me an email or give me a quick 5-minute phone call once or twice a week, and that's all included as part of my service to you. If you want any more than that, then we need to look at payment for another session. So it's about setting appropriate boundaries about the amount of contact, how much contact, etc. In terms of boundaries, I also want to talk to you guys about where do you draw the line when a client finishes their time with you? Are you friends with clients? Do you then offer extra coaching as a pro bono? Where do you draw those lines? So as the coach, it's your responsibility to be the one setting up the appropriate boundaries so that there's no misunderstanding. Quite often you'll have clients wanting to be your friend afterwards so they can maybe get their hands on some free coaching, and that's not appropriate. Why? Well, first of all, you're running a business, and second of all, because if a client gets free, a client who previously paid for coaching from you then gets free coaching from you, how much value are they placing on that free coaching, and how much are they going to commit to it? Well, the answer is not at all, and things can get very, very messy. Now, I'm lucky I haven't gone through that myself. It's not the kind of relationship I form with my clients, but I have seen other coaches go through it, and it can really undo a lot of great work. So you need to have some ethics and some standards about your work, and hold yourself to a high standard in that respect as well. Hold the client to account on their actions. If they have agreed that they're going to take certain actions, the same as you would expect yourself to do them, you must expect the client to do them as well. All right, moving on down the track. Point number 4 under this competency is that the coach demonstrates respect for the client's perceptions, learning style, and personal being. Okay. So this one, a lot of it is just about remembering constantly and reminding yourself that the map is not the territory. The map does not equal the territory. What does that mean? Well, the client's representation or their map in their head of what reality is can never be reality. It is a perception of reality. It's their perception of reality. Now, we know that you know this, but what I want you to remember too, coaches, is that your map is also your map, and it's also not the territory. So the client may have a certain interpretation of something. You may have a different interpretation of something. They're both just subjective interpretations. Neither of them is the whole truth, the whole reality. This is why we have to be very careful not to impose our map on top of the client's map. What we do need to do, yeah, wouldn't it be easier? Deb's saying it would be so much easier if we all had the same map. Ha ha. Deb, you know, for a long time as a kid, I thought everyone did have the same map. How funny is that? All right. So know your client and adjust accordingly. So if you know your client, then you must respect their perceptions, their learning style, their personal being. If you know the things that annoy your client and that bring joy to your client, then make sure you use them appropriately. If you know your client's preferred language style, representation system, learning style, then make sure you adjust your coaching accordingly to accelerate their results and also to make changes effortless and easy as possible for them. You've got to constantly calibrate where your client is at. Some days your client will really want their butt kicked. Some days, for whatever reason, they may be feeling a little bit more tender. So that constant calibration and respect for the other person really needs to come to the fore. You have to have that sensory acuity and notice when the client is feeling comfortable, not comfortable, and know just the right place to go to get them where they want to go. You have to respect that clients are going through slow, organic change. For many of our clients, this is the first time they've heard any of these coaching concepts. It's the first time they've been through a change like this, facilitated like this in their lives. And do you remember how confusing it was the first time you were coached? Well, you just need to respect that what they're going through is a slow and organic change. So being impatient, judging how fast or slow they're able to make their changes, that has no place in the coaching room. You must trust that the client is going through whatever they need to go through to get them wherever they want to go. They're having their own realizations and breakthroughs. You can't supply your realizations and breakthroughs to them. So in a situation, for example, where a client is starting to have a realization perhaps that, I don't know, maybe the job they're in or the relationship that they're in is not suitable for them and they need to change it, even if you see that coming five sessions earlier than they do, it is not up to you to give them that decision. They must come to their own realizations and breakthroughs, and that's showing ultimate respect for their process as well. And always remember that when you're playing with someone in the coaching field, sometimes there are core beliefs and values that are really central to who they are. It's part of their personal identity. And when you come to something that is really, really deeply embedded in your client, be sure to respect that. And even if you don't agree with it, if they don't want to change it, then they're not going to change it anyway. So have respect for their personal identity and any core beliefs and values that they truly wish to retain. So how do you make a call about what behaviours are useful for your client and what behaviours are not useful? How do you make any kind of call about what to challenge them on and what to let go? Well, these are questions that you can ask yourself when you're in that quandary about whether to let a comment go or not. Ask yourself, what are they talking about? Is it resourceful? Is it ecological? Is it working for them? And is it moving them forward? Because ultimately, if a client is using some language or a behaviour that actually is resourceful, ecological, working for them and moving them forward, then really, is it something that needs to be changed? The answer is only if the client wants to change it. So always respect the client's map, their perceptions, their learning style and their personal being, and frame for yourself by answering these questions in your mind before you challenge something if you're not sure. Okay. All right. Number 5 under this subheading is that the coach provides ongoing support for and champions new behaviours and actions, including those involving risk-taking and fear of failure. All right. So how on earth do you do that? How do you support someone in their new behaviours and actions and encourage them even when they're taking risks and they're afraid of failing? Well, one of the absolute essentials in your coach's toolkit is the art of acknowledgement. Acknowledging a client for the steps that they take forward, even if they're tiny, tiny little steps, is a wonderful way of encouraging their new behaviours and actions. And acknowledging as a really, I guess, purposeful process, not just a, hey, well done on that, but really taking the time to give them a powerful and beautiful acknowledgement of the behaviour that you're seeing in them and what it means for them and the resources that you're noticing in them even more. It's also really important to absolutely have the attitude of there is no failure, only feedback. Even when you're feeling, wow, this client could do so much better, or wow, this is taking a lot longer to change than I thought it would, you know what? There is no failure, only feedback. And it's important to teach this to the clients as well. And, you know, you've got to have the guts as a coach to talk through things that they're afraid of and bust any fears using the techniques and tools that you have at your disposal. There are some wonderful NLP techniques for really helping clients deal with their fears and put them aside so that they can take the necessary actions. And you've got to be prepared to go there, even if it could be a scary conversation, even if the client doesn't want to go there, respectfully, of course, even if it's something that you're afraid of yourself. You have got to be prepared to do whatever it takes to get the client there. So, you know, build that armory of great techniques to help clients bust through their fears. Now, there's a couple of comments here. Yeah, Tendai is saying it's easy if we as coaches bring no judgment and facilitate for the client to go where they want to go. Absolutely, Tendai. Yep, for sure. And yeah, encouragement is a great tool to build trust, Beata. Absolutely. One of the really key concepts that I love to share with clients when they're going through big changes and maybe they're having some fears or feeling like things are risky is the 5 steps of success. And this is what Hayden was talking about earlier on in the earlier webinar tonight. So the 5 steps of success. Well, first of all, you've got to build a vision of what it is you want and where you want to go. And then you have to take massive action. Not just little nitpicky, tiny little steps, but big, big action. You then need to have the sensory acuity to notice what's working and is this getting you closer to your goal or not. And if not, then you have to have the behavioural flexibility to change those actions so that you can start correcting your course. And finally, to operate from a physiology and psychology of success. So silencing that inner mini-me, making sure that your physical being and your mental being are supporting you moving forward to where they ultimately want to go. And if you can encourage the client to use those 5 steps of success and really embrace them, then any project that they undertake, any goal that they've set, becomes simply a continuum. It's not a pass or fail situation. It's just a, hey, I'm on the path. If you can use that kind of approach with them, it really gives a lot of breathing room for the client to fully live into that goal and not give up until they've reached it. And the final competency under this subset is that the coach asks permission to coach a client in sensitive new areas. Okay, what do we mean by this? Well, there might be times when you're coaching a client and they have a fear about, for example, getting a promotion at work. And they're self-sabotaging in their careers, and you're really not sure why it is they're having so much trouble moving up the corporate ladder. And you notice through having sensory acuity that, you know, there seems to be more to it. There's this level of fear that comes into the client when they're talking about it that really seems disproportionate to the perceived threat of the promotion. And you need to ask permission then to say, hey, you know what, I could be way off the mark here, but I've noticed that there seems to be something underlying this fear. So is it okay if we go there? And just being willing to explore that with the client. And the client I'm thinking of actually ended up having a huge fear of heights. And this was something that they were aware of, but they had never put 2 and 2 together, that their fear of heights was stopping them from climbing the corporate ladder and stopping them from having great success in their career. And the way that you notice that there are sensitive new areas coming up is just through having that sensory acuity and through calibrating with your client constantly, checking in with them. Hey, what's going on for you there? I noticed that you seemed a little bit nervous or upset when we were talking about that. What's underlying that? So when you then notice that there is something going on, you can use any number of techniques, but one that I highly recommend, and it comes through NLP studies, is using the matrix or deep state repatterning whenever it's indicated. Now, these therapies are timeline-based therapies, and what they do is take the client back to the root cause of their anxiety, their fear, their whatever it is that they're experiencing, and it takes them back in time to a time when perhaps they might have felt under threat. And you need to use these techniques with sensitivity and tact, and also not be afraid to go there when it's time for these techniques. No surface coaching when you're dealing with deep-seated fears. It's time to really dig in. And in order to do that, you must ask permission, because if you don't, you won't be able to access the client's unconscious anyway. This is also about being truthful when a client just, you know, is perhaps in a little bit of denial about the amount of fear or anger or sadness they're feeling about something. Just saying to them, you know what, I'm going to call you on this. It seems that this is a deeper seated issue than we've spoken about, and I really want you to examine that with me. And you must be okay with uncertainty, the coach and the client. So the client, you have to teach them to be okay with being uncertain about what's happening in the coaching session. But coaches, you also need to be okay with uncertainty, especially in sensitive new areas. You never know what's going to come up, and quite often it can be an early childhood experience of violence. There could be abuse there. There could be all kinds of traumatic stuff there, and you need to be okay with going there in order to really serve your client and help them achieve change on a deep level. So how do you do that? Well, you just ask permission. And so you gently ask, hey, is it okay if we go there? Are you willing to take a trip with me? Let's explore this a little bit. Can we play with this a little bit? Because I'm noticing this seems to be a very deep issue for you. And by asking permission, look, I've never had a client say no, but if a client did say no, you must be okay to leave that with them and let them sort that out. I think just about invariably you would find that later on they would say, okay, we need to deal with that thing now. I've got a comment here from one of you guys. I remember when I got coached 10 years ago, and my coach asked me 7 times if I was ready to discuss something that I was very sensitive about, and every time I said no. I walked in one day and I said, I'm ready, and she nearly fell off her chair. She knew we needed to do it, but she didn't push until I was ready. Awesome comment. Thank you very much, Deb. That's such a perfect illustration of what we're talking about. And Deb, by that point, your unconscious mind was already ready to make the change, and you made the change as required, I bet. Thank you very much. The unconscious mind is always protecting us and always serving us, and sometimes it'll protect us by saying no to going into uncomfortable places. But the coach must be prepared to ask for permission to go there. Okay. Wow. Phew. Massive information download, guys. We've only got a couple of minutes to go. And I know you've asked a couple of questions as time has passed, but I now have a couple more moments. So are there any questions? We have just covered off ICF Competency B3, which is about co-creating the relationship and establishing trust and intimacy with the client. So you now know one of the 11 core competencies for your ICF. I encourage you to use these. Have a think about how this fits into your coaching practice, and come back and talk to me again next week. We will look further into co-creating the relationship. Time now, just one more moment for any questions, comments. Great question. Tony, does a coach need insurance? Absolutely. You must get professional indemnity and personal liability, and you may need some product liability as well. The details of that, Doc will be able to assist you with that. I can't remember who I'm with. Great. Okay. So tonight's code for your records is ICF B3. That's ICF B3. Yeah, John, the presentation material is available online. All classes are recorded unless we indicate otherwise. And this recording will be available for you in about a week's time. You'll get an email from Doc and it'll say, hey, here's the class. You've got access to it for a couple of weeks before it goes into the membership website. So absolutely, the slides are there as well. Okay, thanks, Enrico. All right, guys. I think there's no questions, so I'm going to say thank you and good night to you all. Thank you for hanging out with me. It's been quite a wild ride, and we'll see you next week for more ICF core competencies. Thanks, guys, and good night. Have a lovely evening. Thanks, Yasmin. Good night.